Have you ever finished touching yourself, only to feel a strange emptiness afterward? Not satisfaction, not release, just a hollow, almost numbing sense that something was missing, or worse, that maybe you were the one missing. This isn't something we talk about, is it? For many women over 40, self-pleasure becomes this quiet, awkward corner of life. Something we either rush through or quietly abandon, unsure whether it still belongs to us. But what if I told you? The way you've been approaching it might be the very reason it no longer feels right. And that with just a few shifts, you could unlock not only deeper pleasure, but also a reconnection with your body, your hormones, and even your confidence. I'm Dr. Eliza Hart, a board-certified gynecologist with over 15 years of experience helping women in their 40s, 50s, and beyond reclaim their feminine vitality. And if there's one truth I've come to understand deeply, it's this: pleasure doesn't expire. But our habits, especially the ones formed decades ago, might quietly stand in the way of the joy, connection, and balance we deserve. So many of my patients either stop touching themselves altogether, fearing they've outgrown that part of life, or they continue doing it out of routine, using outdated techniques that no longer serve their changing body. What they don't realize is that these silent missteps, though small, may be draining their intimacy, disrupting their hormone balance, and quietly eroding their relationship with themselves. In this video, I'll walk you through the 7 most common self-pleasure mistakes women make after 40, and more importantly, how to correct them so you can begin restoring sensitivity, hormone harmony, and emotional intimacy with the most important person in your life, you. If any part of this already feels familiar, I invite you to type 1 in the comments and be sure to subscribe, because what we're about to uncover could be the beginning of your most empowered chapter yet. 1. Total abstinence thinking. You're past that age. There's a quiet but common belief among women over 40 that stepping away from self-touch is somehow a graceful, protective choice. Many women think I'm beyond that now, or maybe it's better to leave that part of me alone. It can sound like self-respect, but in truth, it's often a quiet retreat, driven by discomfort, shame, or a sense that sensuality no longer belongs in this chapter of life. What may seem like a dignified withdrawal is physiologically a withdrawal of nourishment, the female body especially. Post-menopause thrives on gentle attention. When all forms of stimulation stop, the body responds in predictable, measurable ways. Blood flow to the vulva, and pelvic floor slows down. The tissues begin to thin, dry out, and lose elasticity. You may start to notice discomfort during routine exams or an unfamiliar tightness that makes even sitting feel different. But what's really happening underneath is hormonal miscommunication without stimulation. Your body stops signaling the need for local estrogen activity, and what was once supple, responsive tissue becomes fragile and prone to microtears. I remember one patient, Carol, age 52, who came in for a routine pelvic exam and winced the moment I touched her. She looked confused, even a little embarrassed. "I didn't expect it to hurt," she said. When I asked about her habits, she admitted she hadn't touched herself in any way intimately or otherwise in over 3 years. No intimacy, no self-checks, no massage. She had simply gone quiet with her body, and her body, in return, had gone quiet with her. My advice to women like Carol isn't about rekindling desire overnight. It's about restoration. I often recommend starting with just 10 minutes once a week. No goal, no pressure. Just sit or lie down, place a warm hand on your lower abdomen, and breathe. Let your hands explore your thighs, belly, or chest. Don't chase arousal. Listen for presence. Later, when it feels right, you can gently reintroduce vulvar touch using a pH-balanced moisturizer or a gentle estrogen-friendly lubricant. It's not indulgence. It's nourishment. But even when a woman begins to return to her body, there's another subtle mistake that can undo her progress without her even realizing it: the unchanging repetition of the same motion, the same pressure, every single time. 2. Using the same technique every single time. Once, A woman begins reconnecting with her body. Many expect that simply showing up will be enough. But what often goes unnoticed is how rigidly patterned our touch can become over the years. Decades of repetition lead to what I call sensory shortcuts, using the same fingers, same rhythm, same angle, and same goal-driven routine every single time. It feels familiar. It works until one day it doesn't. What was once a reliable path to pleasure suddenly becomes a hollow ritual. And most women don't realize the problem isn't them, it's the lack of variety. The nervous system, like any living system, thrives on novelty. When you stimulate the exact same spot in the exact same way over and over, the brain begins to carve a very narrow neural loop. That loop becomes so dominant that it starts ignoring all other pleasure pathways. Zones that once responded beautifully now feel numb or silent. I've seen women panic when they stop responding to their usual method. They think something is wrong with their hormones or their desire, but often the issue is that their body has grown too accustomed to one very specific form of input. Susan, 48, came to me feeling disconnected from her partner. She could still climax during solo time, but only if she used her left hand lying on her side in complete silence, and even then, it required precise timing and pressure. Anything outside that formula didn't work. Her body had become trained for one condition and one condition only. This is more common than most people realize. What begins as comfort can easily slip into confinement. To reverse this pattern, I often encourage women to approach self-touch like they would a yoga practice, with curiosity and patience. Try using your non-dominant hand. Change the rhythm or depth of pressure. Add breathwork movement or a different position entirely. Incorporate music mirrors or textures that gently engage other senses. It's not about replacing what works. It's about expanding what's possible. But here's the nuance. Even variety loses its value when it's rushed. Many women shift techniques, positions, or tools, yet still approach the experience like something to check off a list. And that's where the next layer of disconnection quietly begins to grow. Because no matter how many techniques you try, if your body never has the time to fully arrive, the moment will always feel incomplete. 3. Rushing the experience like it's a task. It's one of the most common patterns I see in women over 40. Not avoidance, but speed. A sense that self-touch is something to squeeze in between chores just before sleep, or during a quiet moment when no one's home. It becomes a transaction, not a connection. Quick, goal-driven, mechanical. A few familiar strokes to reach a finish line. And yet, when it's over, there's no sense of relief. Only a strange emptiness, even regret. The truth is, most women have internalized the idea that their pleasure should be quiet, brief, and tucked away. But when we treat our own intimacy like a task to complete, the body responds accordingly. It shuts down the very depth we're trying to reach. Female arousal was never meant to be rushed. Unlike male arousal, which can be more linear and fast-rising, the female system thrives on slow buildup. It needs time to awaken nerve endings, stimulate oxytocin release, and shift the brain into receptivity. When the experience is hurried, those internal systems don't have a chance to fully activate. Pleasure becomes superficial. Climax, if reached, is less satisfying, and the emotional return is flat. It's not that you're broken. It's that the rhythm no longer matches the nature of your body. Linda, 55, described this perfectly. I do it maybe twice a week, she said, but I just want it done. I don't feel connected to it anymore. Her voice was flat, almost apologetic, as if she knew something precious was missing but didn't know how to reclaim it. Like many women, she had been operating in survival mode for years. Kids work, caregiving, and her body had learned to adapt. But now, with space to re-enter intimacy, she realized she no longer knew how to linger. The shift begins with a single decision: slow down. Turn off the overhead lights. Light a candle. Choose music that softens your breath. Don't go straight for touch. Begin with presence. Place your hand on your chest. Feel your heartbeat. Let your breath guide your pace. You are not trying to get there. You are allowing your body to arrive. And if this feels familiar to you, if you've ever rushed through it just to make it go away, I invite you to comment. I've been there. You are not alone, and this can be unlearned. That said, even when a woman begins to move slowly, even when she learns to linger and listen, there's another layer that often goes completely unnoticed, one that limits her fullness, simply because she keeps directing all her attention to a single, narrow place. 4. Only focusing on the genitals, ignoring the rest. For many women, especially those shaped by decades of silence around sexuality, the concept of pleasure becomes narrowly defined, often reduced to one area, one motion, one destination. The focus centers almost exclusively on the clitoris or vaginal canal, as if those are the only places allowed to feel. And while these areas are certainly powerful, what gets lost in that singular approach is the immense untapped potential of the rest of the body. When arousal is funneled into a small corner of sensation, we not only miss out on depth, we disconnect from wholeness. The female body is richly wired. The chest, inner arms, abdomen, lower back, hips, neck, thighs, all are filled with sensitive nerve endings capable of triggering warmth, tingling, even full body pleasure when approached with presence. But when we skip over them, when we treat touch as a direct path to climax rather than a slow journey through sensation, the experience becomes fragmented. It's no wonder so many women describe their self-pleasure as flat or mechanical. They've unknowingly bypassed the very places where intimacy might have deepened. Maria, 59, came to me after a long period of emotional disconnection. She hadn't lost her desire, but she felt numb during both solo and partnered intimacy. Through gentle guidance, we explored the idea of expanding her pleasure map, not by chasing more intensity, but by waking up what had gone silent. She began spending 5 minutes each day just touching her collarbones, breathing into her chest, tracing her hips with soft fingertips. Within weeks, she began reporting subtle waves of arousal she hadn't felt in years, not centered in her genitals, but radiating outward from places she'd once ignored. This is the key start away from the genitals. Let your body awaken slowly, like a fire spreading from embers. Begin with areas you've never thought of as sexual. Let your breath guide you. The goal isn't to excite, it's to arrive. When you finally move toward the vulva, your body is already listening, already softening, already present. It changes everything. But of course, no amount of mindful exploration can overcome one simple physical truth. If touch itself causes discomfort, the body will retreat in self-protection. That's why the next mistake is one that too many women still overlook, and its solution is far easier than most expect. 5. Not using appropriate lubrication. Among the most quietly overlooked barriers to satisfying self-pleasure in women over 40 is the absence of proper lubrication. Many women hesitate to use it, not because they're unaware it exists, but because they don't believe they need it. "I'm not that dry," they'll say, or "lube is only for intercourse, not for me alone in this context." But what they often don't realize is that after menopause, even mild dryness, barely noticeable during the day, can lead to friction and micro tears during intimate touch. And the damage may not show up as dramatic pain. Sometimes it manifests as subtle inflammation, soreness the next day, or a quiet avoidance of touch altogether. As estrogen declines, the vaginal walls and surrounding tissues lose their natural moisture and elasticity. The pH balance becomes more vulnerable, and the delicate mucosal lining is less resilient under friction. What once felt smooth and effortless can become unpredictable, leaving women wondering whether their bodies are betraying them. The truth is, they're not. They're simply asking for more support. Janet, 50, shared her experience with me during a follow-up appointment. She said she had started feeling discomfort whenever she touched herself, which led her to believe she was just too old for it now. But when I recommended an organic pH-balanced lubricant with hyaluronic acid and soothing botanicals, her experience transformed. It wasn't even about sex, she said. It was just about feeling good again, like I wasn't broken. Choosing the right lubricant is an act of self-respect. Look for products that are free of harsh additives, glycerin, or perfumes, especially if you're sensitive to yeast infections or irritation. Ingredients like aloe vera, calendula, and hyaluronic acid can offer hydration and healing, mimicking the body's natural response. And for women struggling with hormonal dryness, using lube isn't optional, it's foundational. Think of it the same way you think of reading glasses or a warm bath for sore muscles. It's not an indulgence. It's an adjustment, one that honors the shifts your body is making and helps you continue engaging with yourself on your own terms. Still, even with the best products, the most nurturing mindset, and the gentlest hands, many women find themselves hesitating, not because of pain, but because of something deeper, a long-standing sense of guilt or shame that keeps them from fully embracing their pleasure. And that perhaps, more than anything physical, is what we must learn to release next. 6. Carrying guilt or shame around self-pleasure. Of all the barriers to intimacy I encounter in women over 40, guilt may be the most stubborn and the least talked about. It rarely shows up as a dramatic refusal or overt rejection. Instead, it settles quietly like a background hum, a soft voice that says, "This isn't for someone like me," or "Good women don't do this," or worse, "I shouldn't need this at my age." For many, these thoughts aren't even conscious. They're inherited, passed down through silence, subtle judgments, and cultural expectations that framed pleasure as indulgent, inappropriate, or even shameful. But the body doesn't lie. And when you carry shame into an experience that's meant to be nourishing, your physiology responds accordingly. Cortisol, the stress hormone, begins to rise. Dopamine and oxytocin, the very chemicals needed to experience pleasure and connection, are suppressed. Over time, this emotional tension translates into physical detachment, lowered libido, reduced sensitivity, or even outright aversion to touch. You may find yourself going through the motions, but feeling nothing, not because your body is broken, but because it no longer feels safe to receive. Ellen, 60, confided in me after holding back for nearly 2 decades. She hadn't touched herself since her mid-40s, not because of pain or disinterest, but because she had internalized the belief that self-pleasure was immature, inappropriate, and somehow incompatible with being a respectable woman. It wasn't until her therapist gently asked if she had ever touched herself with kindness, not for release, but for reconnection, that something shifted. It wasn't even about climax, she later told me. It was about allowing myself to feel worthy again. This is where I often invite women to reframe the entire concept of touch. Not as performance, not as something secret or indulgent, but as a sacred act of emotional self-care. One of the most effective tools I've seen is journaling, writing down what you feel before, during, or after intimate moments with yourself. It can be just a sentence. I felt numb. I felt peace. I felt nervous, but I stayed. Over time, these small reflections help untangle decades of shame and begin to replace them with compassion. And once you've done the brave work of reclaiming permission, don't forget your body isn't asking you to do it alone. There are tools designed specifically for women in this chapter of life that can support your journey and expand your experience in ways you might not have thought possible. 7. Refusing tools designed for women over 40. For many women entering midlife, the idea of using intimacy tools, especially vibrators or pelvic devices, feels foreign, even uncomfortable. There's often an ingrained belief that those things are for younger women, or worse, that using them means something is wrong with your body or your desire. I've heard it countless times. "I'm not that type of woman," or "that just doesn't feel natural to me." And yet, this quiet refusal often becomes the very thing that limits their ability to feel, connect, and heal. What these women don't realize is that the right tool used with intention isn't about replacing your body's responses. It's about helping your body remember how to respond. As we age, the skin becomes thinner, nerve endings dull, and the body's natural responsiveness softens. That's not failure, it's physiology. Just as we adjust our reading glasses, add cushions to our shoes, or change the way we exercise our approach to pleasure, also deserves to evolve. Today's tools are not the flashy gadgets of the past. Many are medically designed for mature skin, tailored to lower hormonal elasticity, and shaped to support gentle pelvic stimulation, not overwhelm. The goal isn't intensity, it's nuance. And for many women, this gentle reawakening can make the difference between enduring touch and actually enjoying it again. Diane, 57, had long believed that intimacy tools were silly and only meant for people who couldn't feel naturally. But after years of muted sensation and increasing frustration with herself, she finally decided to try a simple, curved pelvic wand paired with breathwork. Within weeks, she noticed more circulation, less tension, and most importantly, a shift in how she viewed her own body. It wasn't about the toy, she told me. It was about realizing I still deserve to feel. If you're hesitant, start small. Look for beginner-friendly tools that are medical-grade soft to the touch, quiet and ergonomic. No buzzing rockets or bright pink plastic. This isn't about novelty, it's about honoring where you are now and giving yourself access to the kind of care your body may no longer generate on its own. Think of it like a tuning fork, a way to bring forgotten sensations back into harmony. Because here's what I want you to remember as we close this chapter. Your pleasure never expired, it just needs a new rhythm, a softer invitation, and the courage to meet yourself where you are, not where you used to be. When we look back at the 7 patterns we've explored, avoiding touch altogether, repeating the same technique, rushing through the act, ignoring the rest of the body, skipping lubrication, carrying guilt, and refusing supportive tools, they may appear subtle, even harmless at first glance. But over time, these quiet habits have a cumulative effect. They slowly erode your connection to pleasure, disrupt the natural rhythms of your hormones, and distance you from one of the most powerful sources of self-knowing, your own body. These are not just mistakes in method. They are signs that you've been taught to disconnect from yourself in small, persistent ways. And so I want to leave you with a truth that I hope begins to soften those beliefs. You are not broken. You are not past your prime. You are not wrong for feeling unsure, uncomfortable, or unfamiliar with your own sensuality. You've simply never been given the education, the language, or the permission to care for this part of yourself with the reverence it deserves. As a gynecologist, I've worked with thousands of women who thought something was off, when in reality, they were simply operating from outdated scripts. They just needed to remember that they were worthy of pleasure, not in spite of their age, but because of the life they've lived within this body. This isn't about chasing performance pressure or any particular outcome. Reclaiming your pleasure is about reclaiming presence, about listening to your breath, honoring your pace, trusting your rhythms. It's about tuning in rather than tuning out. And perhaps most importantly, it's about building a new relationship with your body. One that is based not on youth or utility, but on mutual respect, trust, and curiosity. So here is what I invite you to do tonight. Set aside just 15 minutes. Turn off the lights. Let the world quiet down. Place your hands on your chest or belly. Breathe. Close your eyes not to escape, but to listen more deeply. You don't need a goal. You don't need a result. You only need willingness to be with yourself in this moment, just as you are. And if that feels like a stretch, know that you're not alone. Thousands of women are waking up to the truth that their pleasure, their vitality, their connection, none of it ended with menopause. It simply got quieter, waiting for you to come back. You are not too late. This is where it begins. Your body is still listening, and it's time you started listening back. Before you go, I want to thank you not just for watching, but for being willing to sit with a topic that most of the world still whispers about, if it speaks of it at all. Your willingness to explore, to listen, to question what you've been taught is already an act of healing. If this video resonated with you, I would love to hear from you. Leave a comment below. even just a 1, to let me know you're on this journey too. Your voice may be the encouragement another woman needs to begin her own. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. This space is for you, a space of knowledge, compassion, and honest conversations about what it really means to thrive as a woman after 40. Until next time, take care of your body. Take care of your joy, because you deserve both, always.